Hello and welcome to the Power Hour podcast. I'm your host, Scott Barrett, joined as always by John Proctor. Today we have an awesome guest on. We have Nick Whalen, who writes at DLF. He's the co-host of the DLF Dynasty podcast and the Filmetrics podcast. He's the author of the Devy Report, and he's a former D1 football coach. And he's here today to talk to us about some of his favorite rookies and rookies in general. And we can, talk about this from a slight dynasty stance, but really the priority is going to be on year-one production because MFL10s are coming out tomorrow. And as we talked about on our podcast with Rich Rebar, one of the most important things, according to Aaron H., MFL10 legend, is really nailing on those rookies who you project to possibly get taken highly in the NFL draft and see their draft stock rise considerably, or the diamonds in the rough like Michael Thomas last year, Odell Beckham a few years before that. So yeah, Nick, how are you doing? Thanks for coming on the pod.
I'm doing well. I appreciate it, man. I'm a big fan, so I'm glad to get to meet you guys, I guess, right here in our Google Hangouts and talk football with you.
Johnny, how are you doing?
Good, man. Just, excited to get some knowledge on some rookies, something that I'm not as good at as guys like Nick.
Yeah, so Nick's a monster, and he probably logged like 10,000 hours looking at rookies already this year. Me and Johnny, didn't really do that. I watched about 3 games each on all of the top 10 guys or so. Johnny, how much did you watch?
I'm through I mean, for me, it's like the top 4 or 5 guys are the guys that I'm really going to be focusing on right now, because in the early MFLs, I'm not really. I did it last year where I dabbled in those, guys that I thought were like the sleepers, and they tanked a lot of lineups. So I'm going to stick with like the top 4 or 5 guys. Those are the guys I've been watching.
I'm still into those, deep guys. I wasted a lot of draft capital on Leonte Carew in the 18th rounds last year. But again, that's what Aaron H. always talks about, the guy who is consistently the most profitable MFL 10 player. No one does more MFL 10s than him. And he always talks about, getting that round 20 guy who, has a crazy combine and sneaks into the late first and then jumps to being an 8th round pick, 7th round pick. That really just swings so many lineups, so many teams for you. I guess we could start off with the quarterback position. I put in 0 hours into this. And again, Nick, just so you know, I'm not a tape guy. I'm a stats guy. I don't trust my, tape judgment too much. So we're really relying heavy on your expertise here. And guys at home, seriously, check out Nick's stuff. Check out the Devy Report. It's really awesome sound analysis. Nick, you want to tell us about the quarterback position? I seriously watched nothing.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, and again, I'm complete opposite of you. I don't like really the combine. I don't really like the stats as much. I mean, that, I don't know, probably works about 20% into my analysis. I mean, the rest is just film because I want to see them do it on the field. But when we're talking quarterbacks, I mean, it's tough, from your MFL 10 perspective to get a quarterback to produce very highly his rookie year. But really, it's a 3-man race at the top. My top guy is Mitch Trubisky, North Carolina. I think he's the safest of that group in terms of a floor. And I know that's going to surprise people with Deshaun Watson and the career he's had at Clemson. But Trubisky just kind of has a better arm. I like how he progresses through his reads and moves in the pocket well. If you're looking for more of a fantasy angle of a safe floor, Watson could be that his rookie year, just because he does run quite a bit as well. And he's smart about it. He's not going to take big hits. But Watson is a little bit less as accurate as Mitch Trubisky. He obviously did well in the national championship game, and that's what people are going to remember. But he had a lot of errant throws, throwing behind guys. They kind of made a lot of spectacular catches, in my opinion, to kind of save Deshaun Watson. So I think he doesn't really have the ceiling of Trubisky, but that running could help him out his rookie year. And then really the the high ceiling, the low floor is Deshaun Kaiser, Notre Dame. Great size. He's got a great arm. He is also a good athlete. He's not bad either. He will run, but he's not as polished in terms of his mechanics and more specifically consistency of his mechanics, because he will, at one point he'll overstride, he'll understride, he'll throw a little less accurate ball just because for some reason he doesn't have that consistency with everything that he does. And that worries you, especially if you, in your angle here, Scott, in terms of the MFL10. I mean, you want that guy that's going to be consistent at least his rookie year. Now, again, if it all comes together and it's a great situation, which is another thing we should discuss, it could happen for him, Dak Prescott, et cetera. But, with a lot of these rookies, if you're drafting right away, you don't know where they're going to land. So right now we're basing off of their profile and their athletic ability and skill set and less on situation.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue. Definitely, landing spots of huge importance here. And with these, talking from an from an MFL 10 perspective, rookie quarterbacks really tend to go late. Like I think even Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston were round 18, 19, 20 guys last year. You saw that pre-NFL draft. Wentz and Goff were round 18, 19, 20 guys. And you really – and if you could land a rookie quarterback, I know we know rookie quarterbacks tend not to be great their first year historically, instead of like an RG3 or Russell Wilson. But if you could land a quarterback in round 19 who starts every single game and gives you that nice floor, that really could help your lineups a lot. You might not have a high ceiling, but just getting that production every single day, every single week. Let's talk about landing spot. What would an ideal landing spot be for you for one of these guys where you can come in, start every single day, and have strong wide receivers to throw to?
Yeah, and I know this is going to be a huge homer pick, but I think it's Chicago. I mean, that's my favorite team. But when you want to look at Cleveland, you want to look at the Jets, Marshall's kind of going downhill. I know Decker's still there. You want to look at the 49ers, that's the mess as well. Chicago, if they re-sign Jeffrey, you have Kevin White, again, 2 season-ending injuries, but he has the potential. And I am a huge Cameron Meredith fan. If you have not watched film on him, that guy is a legit NFL wide receiver. He comes back to the ball. He works hard after the catch. He has strong hands. So, I mean, that's a three-headed monster right there. And plus, you already have, I think, the best interior not the best, pardon me, maybe top 3, top 5 interior offensive line in the NFL if they're all healthy, plus a good running game to support that rookie quarterback. He'll give him that time, make defenses come up, and he'll have easy play action passes as well.
Do you, as a Chicago homer, do you think Alshon stays there?
I think he has to. When you look at that team overall, they are lacking talent just everywhere, and they have so much cap space. I mean, Cutler's going to be gone. They're going to cut a few other guys, and I think I remember it was north of $80 million if they let them go. And who else are you going to sign better in free agency rather than Alshon Jeffrey?
I guess my question is more so: do you think that bridge has been like burned, or do you think like they're Alshon and them are still okay? I don't know. It just seemed like a weird situation last year.
No, and you're right. I mean, that it was a little weird because in the offseason, he decided not to partake in the offseason program and do his own thing. And then he still came back and he had some injuries. So no, you're completely correct there. And also the usage was really weird for him. I mean, Alshon's a player a lot like Mike Williams, which we'll talk about later, that has to have a quarterback trust him to throw him the ball. And he didn't have quarterbacks because Chicago was on their second, third, and eventually fourth quarterback with Jimmy Clausen. They didn't trust Alshon right away, so it took some time. So he wasn't big into the offense. But there were things he said at the end of the year where it was, hey, Chicago's got a good thing going here. I think he said like Super Bowl or something next year, if I remember correctly, which is funny even for me as a Bears fan. So to me, that says he likes what's going on there and he wants to build that, not that, hey, I want to bounce.
Yeah. If he sticks, though, that will definitely be like at least a productive landing spot for a rookie quarterback. I would buy.
I like that you slid that Cam Meredith hot take in there.
I'm a big fan. I mean, there's a few guys that I really like a lot. Him and like Adam Thielen are kind of my two.
Oh yes.
I mean, it's just like it's like people remember Well, people have this big connotation. If you're an undrafted free agent, they hang on to that forever instead of how good the guy is on the field, which is all that matters in our industry. I mean, if you can produce, I want you. And Thielen does it, and Meredith does it. I mean, he looked good doing it. I mean, 6'2", 6'3". He's a former quarterback. Does a lot of years at a wide receiver position. He's athletic enough. He's not Julio. How many of them are there out there? Strong hands, good route runner. I mean, I don't know what else people want. Now, if Jeffrey leaves, I get that that's going to help his targets and attention. But in the same realm, I mean, I think he's outplayed Kevin White at this point as the other starting wide receiver.
Wouldn't be hard to do.
You definitely won brownie points with me. Adam Thielen's my guy since preseason DFS. I posted a few weeks ago. He had one of the 10 best depth-adjusted wide receiver seasons of the past decade. And the other guys on the list were like Victor Cruz in his monster breakout year, Jordy Nelson in his monster breakout year, and then just Adam Thielen sliding in. Also, he has like 120 rushing yards on 8 carries in his career. I don't know. He's just a guy I like a lot. Again, quarterback's really not a position where you're going to get super excited about targeting these quarterbacks. And Nick, you don't think like Trubisky, he's your number one guy, but would you say he's like a game-changing talent? Or should we be as hyped about him as we were with Mariota and Winston 2 years ago?
No, I think all three of these guys need some time to develop into the NFL game. A lot, they'll need more seasoning than Mariota and some of those other guys will. Now, again, that's all with, if perfect things come together like Dak Prescott. Like, you can't think that way. You can't think of the outliers. You have to think of what they're going to need. Kaiser needs some seasoning. Trubisky has started one college season in his career. He started a little bit the year before, but that's not a lot of time. I mean, that's going into the Mark Sanchez out of USC. He had one starting year. So you want more, just development of him getting used to playing football and starting. And Watson, I think he needs to get stronger, and I think he needs to work a little bit on what his technique's going to be a consistent contributor in the NFL. So no.
Awesome.
Yeah. I struggle with passing quarterbacks in their rookie year. I just I don't want them. If they're not going to run, I don't want them.
Yeah, I mean, and Watson could run. I mean, you could see him going to like Cleveland and maybe being down a lot and doing all that kind of stuff. But again, I don't want to play that guessing game. Not this early in MFL10s anyway.
Right.
So another position that's kind of somewhat similar. I haven't watched too much tape on it, but people are super excited about this class of tight ends. Again, we know rookie tight ends rarely produce in their rookie season. Hunter Henry being a Dak Prescott-like outlier. What can you tell me about this tight end class from a year one perspective? Anyone to get super excited about pre-NFL draft?
Yeah, I think there is. This could be the best tight end class I can remember since I've been scouting kind of the tight end position. So, and the good thing about it is you kind of have your own flavor of whatever you want. OJ Howard is kind of the top guy, excuse me, for most people. And OJ Howard is a good blocking tight end as well as a good receiving tight end. Big guy, 6'5", 6'6". He's going to be 260 plus, and he's going to be able to, help out in many different ways and help with that play action, but he can get down a seam. He ran a 4.49 out of high school. He's probably not going to run that fast now. He put on the weight. He'll probably be high 4.5s, which is still pretty good, probably 4.5, 8-ish range. And then you have an Evan Ingram, who's my personal favorite. Evan Ingram is basically a wide receiver. He's that move tight end, that Aaron Hernandez, 6'3", 220 type of guy, but he stems during his routes, throws DBs off, has great hands, good after the catch. He probably runs maybe a 4.52 or better. I think he can really fly. He is going to be, again, if he gets in that team situation that utilizes a move tight end, Jordan Reed, et cetera, I think he really could flourish. And then you have the wildcat here that has risen a lot, in David Njoku from Miami. He has really good size. Think of Eric Ebron, but a guy that's bigger and perhaps more athletic. We'll see. I don't know if he's going to run that 40 time that Ebron did, but he's super athletic. Former basketball guy too, if I remember correctly. And he's young. I mean, Njoku is only 20 right now, so he'll be young coming in. And I think those three guys, if put in the right position, could even do something their rookie year. Now, I know that's rookie tight ends. We wait 2 or 3 years. That's kind of the thing. But this is kind of an exception, I think, to the rule. Besides that, there's a few guys, out there I still like, but I think they're going to need some seasoning.
Michael Roberts, Jake Butt, and Gerald Everett. Are those the other guys that you were just alluding to right there?
Those are a couple. Yeah, I mean, you also have, Bucky Hodges, former 5-star quarterback recruit that's athletic, doesn't play as big as he should, but he'll have a good combine. Jordan Leggett, Clemson, he's pretty good as well. Jonnu Smith out of Florida International, he flashed pretty well during some of those senior games and had a really good year at Florida International, then it went down year, but he's a little bit more of that move tight end as well. I kind of like him. The guys that you had mentioned as well, and then Jeremy Sprinkle at Arkansas, a little flyer there.
Did you also sneak in a hot take that you have Evan Ingram over David Njoku?
See, I do. That is a little bit of a hot take, and most people don't have that. I think Evan Ingram is just such a phenomenal wide receiver talent. If he was a wide receiver in last year's class, he would have been, arguably my top guy if you went back to wide receiver, because he's in the slot at Ole Miss. He's doing that kind of stuff, and I think he's better than Treadwell was coming out. So right there, that kind of tells you the level of a receiver that he is. And again, we play fantasy football. We don't do the blocking tight end thing. That doesn't give us anything. So I really could envision Ingram being phenomenal if in the right role. But again, that's to be determined.
What if he? I don't know. What if a team drafts him and makes him a wide receiver? Would you still like him just as much? Like, you just don't care. You like it.
Yep. I love him. I mean, 6'3", 220. I mean, that's that size that, I mean, if you want to go into hot take, if he was a pure wide receiver, I might like him over Mike Williams. He's up there for me.
Oh, man.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The reason I ask that is because, like, if you like him more than a lot of the wide receivers, which I'm not very stoked about this wide receiver class, at least from the little bit that I've watched. So if there could be a leak that the tight end is actually the guy that we should be interested in. And that's a big edge if that's true.
No, exactly. And I'm with you. I'm not super excited beyond the one guy in this wide receiver class. And Mike Williams still isn't bad, don't get me wrong. But beyond that, it's really a little bit of a pick your flavor and kind of a flyer after that. I've kind of dipped on that class. So yeah, if Ingram goes to a wide receiver or he's utilized in that way, that could definitely be a huge lottery ticket late in these drafts for MFL10.
Yeah. Or he ends up like in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan or something.
Exactly. Ooh, that'd be exciting. Ooh.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you just talked about Michael Williams, so maybe we should segue into the wide receiver class. And, I spent all Friday night, Saturday, watching the running backs and just falling in love with those running backs. And then I watched the wide receivers, and like Johnny, I was super underwhelmed. I think that there's a false flag debate going on right now of who's the top wide receiver, Corey Davis versus Mike Williams, to distract us from how much better the running back class is than the wide receiver class. But yeah, that's the big debate right now. Corey Davis versus Mike Williams. I feel strongly about this. You feel strongly about this. Nick, who do you have as your top wide receiver?
It's not a debate for me. It is and always has been Corey Davis, wide receiver, Western Michigan. He is the safest player in this entire draft, in my opinion, because he does everything well. There are some things that he does that are great, but he does everything well to the point where I don't see how he cannot be a top-end wide receiver too, if you're thinking in Dynasty, and even producing his rookie year. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's a bigger version of maybe Sammy Watkins. I've heard of a Desiree Julio Light. That's exactly where Corey Davis is, because he has the athleticism, the size, the ball skills, as well as the route running. He is a phenomenal route runner. And again, the NFL, you got to get separation, and he does that.
I've read, I guess, people saying that he has inconsistent hands, though I haven't watched enough to say that I've noticed that. Is that something that you think is a concern?
I don't think it's a concern, but it's valid because he does drop passes at times. And I don't know what it is, but it's not to the level of, we're talking about Darius Hayward-Bay or something like that. I mean, this guy has been top 10 in the NCAA for 3 straight years in receiving yards. He's the all-time leader in FBS history in receiving yards. I mean, he's done enough to prove that. But, kind of like T.O., he's going to drop some sometimes, and that's just going to kind of come with the territory, I think.
Yeah, I had in my notes that, there definitely were some concentration drops, but not just that. A lot of times he got his hands on the ball and he just didn't reel it in. Like, he does this amazing acrobatic move and he like puts his hands up. The ball touches the hand and he's like, oh my God, is he gonna? And then every time he just doesn't reel it in. Or not every time. I mean, there were some times where he made like an amazing touchdown catch on a batted ball he shouldn't have got. Other times, he just reaches over a defender with hands in his face and comes away with it. But beyond just drops, there are a lot of times, it was a tough catch that you'd like to see him reel in that he didn't.
Yeah, and I think the contested reception area is probably the weakest part of his game. But if you want to look in that and put that in the context of every other rookie wide receiver here, there might be only, I don't know, 4 guys I would put over him in the contested catch area. You know what I mean? So again, like I said, like that's an area I would say he's still good at. He's not great there, but everything else just kind of makes up for that. But yeah, that's certainly his weaknesses. The one thing that I think gets underestimated with Corey Davis, and again, it's a guy that was huge on the Devy Report, 3 years ago it would be at this point, is he's a guy that consistently works hard and finds those areas in his game that he doesn't do well at and has improved. I mean, he was a pure body catcher his freshman season and then transitioned a little bit to a hands catcher his sophomore year and then almost an all hands catcher junior and senior year. So those are good things that you want to see a guy evolve there, as well as athleticism and route running. So he has that work ethic, which again, that's a whole nother category, but I think that's super important.
Yeah, he was fantastic after the catch too. So when I watch a wide receiver on tape, I want to see them do 3 things. I want to see them get separation, catch the ball, and do stuff after the catch. And outside of, nitpicking concentration drops, Corey Davis to me did it all, and he's my top wide receiver. A guy who kind of only did one of those 3 things, in my estimation, is Mike Williams. Let's hear your rant.
Yeah, and again, I don't know why it's a debate. I mean, Mike Williams is a fine player, but again, just like Alshon Jeffrey, he's going to have a quarterback that is going to throw up the ball to him. I think the reason why it's a debate, Scott, is because people watch the national championship game and they turn on a highlight tape and they're like, oh, look, Mike Williams is awesome. Instead of watching every game and you see him not come down with every contested reception. So he's not Mike Evans out there. But he's pretty good in the contested reception area, but I don't see him separating from defenders regularly during routes, as you had said. Even though I think he has solid technique and he knows what he's doing, he's not near the athlete that Corey Davis is, and that's concerning. If you're not getting separation in the college level, how's that going to be when you have much more athletic guys and defensive schemes in the NFL, as well as after the catch? I think he's maybe average in that area. I mean, he uses strength and sometimes he can go, but he just does not have that second or third gear. And that's concerning to me. Now, the reason it's concerning to me is because people are saying he's the top receiver or he's a top 3 rookie pick, or you want to spend all his capital, or he's a top 10 NFL draft pick. I'd be very surprised if that's where he ends up, because to me, he's a good player. He should be a mid-late first-round NFL draft pick still, don't get me wrong, but he's not going to be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. He won't be.
Oh, man. Love it. Yeah, I completely agree, Nick. That was a fantastic rant. Strongly agree. Johnny, do you have anything to add on Mike Williams?
It's just like he's one of those guys like with last year with Treadwell. It's like you had all these people. You've got like a handful of people that are coming out saying, oh, he's going to be really, really good. He's great. He's this, he's that. But then there was enough like uncertainty that he shouldn't have been going where he was going in redraft leagues, So you had him going like, what was he going, like 8th, 9th round or something, like before the draft even happened? That's crazy. And I think we can start to see some of that hype with Mike Williams as people are watching highlight tapes of him and stuff, where he's going to start going more. He's going to go earlier than like an Adam Thielen or something. And it just shouldn't happen. So he's someone I probably won't have any of in the early redraft leagues.
One stat for you, Scott. I posted this on Twitter. I don't know if you saw this or not.
I retweeted it.
Oh, did you? Okay. I mean, he has 2 receptions in his college career of 40 yards or more. That's concerning to me. For a first-round NFL draft pick, I mean, even if you're not a speed guy, 2?
Yeah. But he's not slow either.
He's not fast.
No, and he's not fast. And to me, you have Deshaun Watson throwing you the football, and we just talked about him being a top pick. And you have other guys drawing attention away on defenses. I mean, to me, that just says, one, how he's going to be utilized. He's going to be a possession to intermediate type of guy. He can't get that separation or blow by defenses. And that's just what he'll be. So again, he'll be maybe a low end wide receiver 2 at best, probably a wide receiver 3 in the NFL, and he'll be solid in the red zone.
One thing I just want to add is I see a lot of comps to like Dez Bryant. And the thing is, there are plays where he's Dez Bryant, but it's these amazing like mid-air acrobatic catches where he boxes out the defender like a center in basketball. He goes up, he snatches the ball out of the air and stuff like that. But he's not getting Dez Bryant separation. Anquan Bolden is just as strong at the catch point at 36 years old and, probably isn't too far off of him in terms of separation. I don't know. He's not for me. Where does he rank among your wide receivers?
Well, just in terms of the wide receiver classes, you guys have said he has to be number 2 just because I don't really like anybody else that much. So, when we're talking about the running backs later, I mean, I think it's going to be a debate who's the 4th best rookie. And then when you want to look at MFL10 area, when you're talking about Mike Williams, that quarterback to trust him, I think getting him first year is going to be super risky because that quarterback has to trust to throw him the ball when he's covered.
Right. Yeah. No, so I just want to say like these Dez Bryant comps, like last year it was Treadwell, this year Mike Williams, like these guys aren't as big as Dez Bryant was. So the Dez Bryant comps need to stop. Like Dez Bryant was like 220, 230 range at like various points of his career. So these guys who are 205 are not Dez Bryant. It's just annoying.
Well, and Dez Bryant is really, really good. And that's disrespectful to Dez Bryant.
Right. But he's also like moving just as fast as these guys and he weighs like 20 pounds more. So it's like, it's just the body type isn't even the same. But anyways, so you were talking about the like who's next. I've seen a lot of people that are actually starting to like this little midget guy, John Ross, but he doesn't seem like I've seen like some projected 40s of like the high 4.4s, like low 4.5s. Like that doesn't seem that fast for me.
No, he's going in the like early 4.4s, late 4.3s.
Is he going to be that fast? Okay, because I've seen I've seen people all over the map with how fast he's going to be.
Will Fuller sneaking into the draft to the first round last year, I think it's going to be kind of like the same thing. But I actually like John Ross's game significantly more than Fuller. He has much better hands. I think he's a little limited in terms of the different types of routes he's running. It was a lot of just the 9 route. It was a lot of manufactured touches at the line of scrimmage. But he's an amazing special teams return guy. He could be super joysticky at times. So I went to Rutgers, Nick, and that they're just terrible. John Ross, just on 3 9 routes, put up like 260 yards and 3 touchdowns, as well as a special teams touchdown. I liked it. Deshaun Jackson's the current comp. It's like the Ted Ginn, Will Fuller with better hands, but I do like him. I do kind of like his game, but he is a little more limited and maybe not. I don't know, Nick. What do you think?
Well, Rutgers is kind of wide receiver you over there, man. You guys, Kenny Britt, and you got Carew, and I'm missing another guy in there.
I'm not sure.
There's another.
Oh, Sanu, yeah, Mohamed Sanu.
Yeah, Sanu. There you go. Yeah, a little wide receiver you. People.
He's a quarterback though.
Yeah, he was a quarterback. Brian Leonard too, right? Throwing out Rutgers guys. No, and you know what? John Ross he's my wide receiver 3. And before me and George just did the last Filmetrics episode, he wasn't, and I was very anti him. But after watching, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 games of him, I respected his game a little bit more, because the other thing to add to what you said, Scott, I agree with everything that you had. But his threat of speed and going by people allows him to hitch up and catch just free hitches. I mean, it's like a 9-yard cushion, and they're already backpedaling. So he's just like, thanks. And he does. I think he's soft after the catch, though. While he does try to be joysticky, he's just not instinctually or great enough hips to actually do it. He's not, Dante Hall out there or anything. Listeners won't remember Dante Hall. Sorry, I should think of like a current guy, but you know what I mean? Like a guy that can joystick and go by people, but he has a well-rounded game. The biggest concern for me about John Ross, besides I don't think he's phenomenal. I mean, you said Deshaun Jackson. I don't think he has those tracking skills or ball skills. I mean, Deshaun Jackson is very underrated in that area. Is John Ross's injury history? I mean, you're talking about torn meniscus, torn ACL, torn meniscus. Right now, he's going to have surgery on his shoulder after the combine, and he had microfracture surgery. So those are all the injuries. He's only produced highly in one season in college. So, if you want to spend huge capital on one guy for 1 year, I get it. He's a great athletic talent, but he's not going to run by everybody in the NFL either. He's got to develop other parts of his game.
Yeah.
If our listeners don't know who Dante Hall is, I am very disappointed in them. And they should go on YouTube right now, type in Dante Hall, sickest juke ever. And it's going to be a highlight from a game against Denver. And it's easily one of the best plays I've ever seen.
Awesome play.
So do you think his limitations as a route runner are going to hurt him his rookie year? Do you think a team's still going to find a way to, just chuck it deep to him when they can?
I think he's a great wide receiver too and complimentary guy if he's in the right scheme. So let's talk about this Dez guy, right? If you put John Ross opposite him, it's almost perfect. So now he's going to stretch the field, let Dez work everything underneath he wants, and then he'll be singled up. So he might have some of those Will Fuller type games, but in terms of the route running and the amount of targets that he's going to receive, I just don't see him being significant enough to be a huge rookie season.
Yeah. The thing about Fuller too, like even though he would drop like everything, he got open as shit. Like that guy like runs some really nice routes. So we talk about, not having quite the route tree. Scott, you said he's only been running 9 routes and stuff. That's not, Fuller had a route tree, man. And that's not something, I think that's something you need to have as a deep threat in the NFL. You can't just run right by somebody. Like you do in college.
So yeah, I actually like Will Fuller. I think he's a little underrated right now. I know people are mad about the drops, but like you said, he has much more of a route resume to him. I guess if that's a phrase, I'll use it. As well as I like him after the catch. He's aggressive even in traffic, and John Ross just isn't that. And those are things that you'd like to see. And again, if you can get the hands and get it all coming together, maybe some confidence. I like his game more than kind of the average person right now.
Yeah. Ross is just he's small. He's small.
Remember, these guys are a little bit more valuable in the best ball format where you can just take their big weeks where they get those 2 deep touchdowns and then all the games where they don't do anything, doesn't really hurt you too much if you have some better guys around them. But yeah, I like what you're saying, and I think that should be a concern. So maybe we shouldn't get too excited about John Ross, and he is a little more dependent on the team where he lands. So yeah, this is my top 3, same as your top 3. After that, it gets a little bit trickier. Some guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, Taywan Taylor, Zay Jones, Cooper Kupp are the guys commonly, being mocked after this top 3. Who do you have next, Nick?
I think I have Juju there by kind of default right now because no one's really stepped up their game. I really want to like Chad Hansen a lot out of Cal. He's got phenomenal ball skills, and he's just mean in the air, and I like that. And even those touchdown celebrations afterwards, man, he is just talking crap to the other team, and I like that. I just don't know that he's enough of an athlete, so that part scares me a little bit. And even in the same realm, you were talking about valuable guys that get deep down the field. I just wanted to quick rattle off some names just for some listeners if they need some lotto tickets late in the draft. I mean, KD Cannon's a guy that I like a lot. I think he's going to be my wide receiver 5 right now out of Baylor. He has a good catch radius on top of having that flat out speed in that Baylor offense. Now, I know it sets them up well to, kind of beat people deep. You had mentioned Taywan Taylor, Western Kentucky, little shout out there. That's where I went to school. But also Carlos Henderson, he can get deep. And I like Josh Malone a lot. Super athletic guy. He's going to blow up the combine. He's going to rise real quick in these drafts. Yeah,
I love that you just brought up Chad Hansen. he had one of the sickest boundary catches I've ever seen. Like his game against Texas gave me so many boners. It was just fantastic. I know they have a bad secondary, but it was just amazing. And that one catch he had where he got 1 foot just barely, inbounds. It was like Brandon Lloyd-esque, and he immediately knew he got it inbounds. Oh man, it was just awesome. I'm a big fan of his. Josh Malone is a guy that I think Russ Clay keeps bringing up to me in DMs. Can you just tell us a little bit more about him?
Yeah, me and him have love fests about Josh Malone quite often. And actually, my very first article at DLF was on Josh Malone coming out of high school. So you're talking about a guy that, 6'3", he's going to be just over 200 pounds. He's a little skinny, but he's got the athleticism. I mean, he's going to be running in the high 4.4s at worst. He has ball skills, good vertical leap, good after the catch. But Tennessee's just kind of a mess. They really haven't developed wide receivers well there. Josh Dobbs can't get the ball to him that well. I think he was kind of miscast, and plus he got hurt a little bit. But when you want to look in terms of production and yards per reception and making big plays, Josh Malone made them. I want to see him get a little bit stronger and develop his game a little bit more. But, man, he is so low on people's lists right now. He's probably a late first-round pick in terms of, like, rookie drafts for Dynasty for me even right now.
What does a high school Dynasty article consist of?
Breaking down his game. I'm including clips there. I'm projecting how he's going to be, and maybe I'm just a little biased, huh?
We got a good guest when they're breaking down high school film and writing articles on that. So Taywan Taylor was a guy I really loved, last year. I wrote a bunch about him. Earlier this year, I was saying, he might be my 2017 Leonte Carew, which I know now doesn't sound like much, but I really loved a lot of things about him, and most of it were stats based. And that's kind of hard to do with a Western Kentucky wide receiver, just because of the kind of offense they run. Really, a ton of stats. It's easy to accumulate those there. But also an NFL.com article that said he's 6'1", 195 pounds, and he was clocked at 4.33 in the 40-yard dash and a vertical jump of 39.5 inches. The vert, I could probably see. The 4.33 40-yard dash, after watching him more on tape, I don't think that's valid. I would love that to be the case. Then, he kind of sneaks into the late first or early second round just based on that alone, as we've seen from wide receivers like Rashad Perriman and Will Fuller before. Nick, what do you think about that?
I like Taywan Taylor overall quite a bit, as you said. He's a guy that I think has a pretty complete game for a speed area or speed, labeled wide receiver. Good ball skills, tracks the ball well, can do stuff after the catch. His worst area is not physical. Contested areas or contested receptions, he's not real good. In crowds, he's not great. And in the line of scrimmage, it's sometimes, he can get with a good press corner, he's going to have issues. But overall, the rest of his game is pretty impressive. He made plays against LSU, even though he's kind of getting dogged the whole game. He makes plays there, and as you said, he's accumulated enough of a resume over a long period of time to, I think, get some respect even among the NFL draft community, even from a small school. But yeah, I don't see a 4.33 on tape. He's probably maybe a low 4.4s, mid 4.4s kind of guy. He could still fly. Don't get me wrong, but man, 4.33, I don't see that.
Yeah, I agree, and he's still a wide receiver. I certainly do like, but my insanely lofty tweets from earlier in the year maybe don't hold as much weight. Maybe a round 3 guy, you'd say? Round 4?
Yep, round 3, round 4 is about right. Now, the problem is, as I said before, there's so many guys that are speed players. And again, I just thought of another one, D.D. Westbrook from Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of a speed class, in my opinion. You have the guys that have all of this speed, and then you have guys that are fairly slow. Like Cooper Kupp and Zay Jones. I'm not a huge fan of Zay Jones. Juju Smith-Schuster is going to run pretty slow, in my opinion. So you kind of have a huge divide of the guys that can run quick and the guys that are going to be the route runners and possession type of players.
Zay Jones blew up the combine. I mean, sorry, the Senior Bowl. He's definitely not going to blow up the combine. But he was PFF's highest graded wide receiver. And, they have a really good track record with that. I think they had Tyler Lockett there 2 seasons ago, Amari Cooper, and Sterling Shepard, I think, was another guy who, not a lot of people were on him, and then he kind of rose a little bit more late. So they do kind of have a good track record there, but and it didn't a big name guy just mock him in the first round? Mel Kiper, I think.
I didn't see that, but Zay Jones, I think he's going to be a better NFL player than he is going to be a fantasy player at all, because he does things well in terms of route running, in terms of ball skills and things like that. He's just not a good athlete. And he accumulated huge stats by running short routes and screens and things like that. And his yards per reception, I don't know of it offhand. It pales in comparison to anyone else in this class. And that just speaks a little bit to his game. Even when he does catch it and wants to burst up the field, he doesn't have it in him. So right now he's almost on my do not draft list, because I know people are going to like him, and because they like the small school guy, and he's going to be something, and he's on my do not draft list just because you have to have a certain level of athleticism for me to like you. I don't know the difference between Zay Jones and I comped him as a poor version of Marvin Jones, and Marvin Jones isn't a great fantasy asset outside of he started off really well last year, but you want to go to a poor version of him, I don't know that he's going to be a huge fantasy contributor.
Any other guys you want to touch upon? Jalen Robinette's a guy who, dominated every market share statistic, yards per route run, and things like that. Maybe.
No, just a few other guys I think to keep an eye on. Josh Reynolds has some good ball skills. He did pretty well in the senior games down there, but he's a little thin, so he's gonna have to develop a little bit. But I like a lot to his game, but he's gonna be more of a complimentary wide receiver. Curtis Samuel is gonna be real interesting to see what happens from him out of Ohio State. The running back / wide receiver / slot guy, and how he'll be utilized. I know people get really up in arms over Alvin Kamara, who I'm not a big fan of. And Curtis Samuel does a lot of the same stuff, but he's more athletic. So if you're looking for that third down back type of guy or a slot guy just to get tons of targets, he could develop into that for sure.
Cooper Kupp, I guess, can be the last wide receiver we'll talk about.
You want to talk about a guy that dominated statistically. Cooper Kupp was phenomenal in college, and a huge bully too. I compare him to Anquan Bolden, and people that comp him to only white receivers, shame on you. That guy is going to beat up NFL defensive backs. I just don't see the level of athlete out there. I just don't. And so that worries me. Now, I know that's why I said Bolden, because Bolden's not a great athlete, but he's going to outwork people, and that's what Kupp will do. So he's definitely going to be very exciting to watch, and I think he will be a successful NFL wide receiver. I just can't see a huge fantasy breakout for him. He could be a wide receiver 3 potentially in a fantasy season. I could see something like that. And also another comp, if I were to go with a white guy, it'd be Eric Decker.
All right, guys. So I guess that wraps up the wide receiver position. Corey Davis is someone to get excited about. Outside of that, I don't know. Who you take in round 19 and 20?
KD Cannon, if he's there.
All right. KD Cannon then. Now we can move on to, what's obviously the most exciting position in this draft class. Well, outside of tight ends that we like as well. And that's running backs. And Dalvin Cook is the top running back, or I'm going to fight you, Nick.
No, it's Dalvin Cook in terms of fantasy. In terms of the NFL, I would rather have Leonard Fournette.
Really? Okay. I think I like Christian McCaffrey a little bit more than Fournette. From a fantasy perspective, I guess. NFL is maybe somewhat different. We can get into Fournette and we can get into McCaffrey in a second. But let's talk about Dalvin Cook. From my notes, his offensive line was terrible, I think maybe 2 years in a row. Does amazing work fighting for extra yardage, a lot of forced missed tackles, a lot of yards after contact. he's a monster in the open field. I think my notes said he's a serial rapist in open space. And you can see every time he bounces outside, the home crowd just like erupts like, oh my God, it's going to be a 60-yard touchdown, because you really feel that every single time he gets the ball. Great at shedding tackles, so hard to tackle. He's a great receiver, big home run playability. Anything else there, Nick?
I think I'm just interested to see what your notes are now. If that's what you have down for him, I want to read all of your notes.
Wait till you see what I have on Kamara.
No, that's similar. I think you're probably higher on the Cook than I am. I see a guy that's not as creative as a guy that's below 200 pounds maybe should be with that athleticism. And I don't know if that's a vision thing or not, but I mean, when the play breaks down, he really doesn't have it, which you think a lot of those small guys do. And that's one of the biggest knocks on Fournette. But yeah, super explosive. I think that's a little bit inconsistent at times. Sometimes I see amazing, like elite, one of the best elite bursts that you can have out there. And other times I'm like, I thought he was going to house that one. Sometimes I question his third level vision. If he could make this cut a different angle, he definitely would take it to the house, and sometimes he doesn't. But yeah, he's a great, playmaker, good after the catch as well. I think he does well in terms of hiding and coming out and catching the flat, and he's a huge mismatch to linebackers as well. I don't know how great he'll be interior run wise. I'm a little worried over his 2 shoulder surgeries that he's had while he's at Florida State. That's one reason why I think Fournette's more of an NFL back for me if I had to pick between the two. And then the 3 off-field incidents for Dalvin Cook kind of scare me a little bit there. But, overall, he's definitely a great talent. And I think people are going to love him because people always love speed when it comes to running back, and that doesn't always work out. Lake Seastrunk, David Wilson, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's interesting is that I have seen these MFL10s aren't open yet, but the FFPC leagues are open, and there are drafts where Cook is going in like the middle of the second round, and I think that's absolutely nuts because he hasn't even been drafted, and 2, I think there's this he is the next Zeke Elliott kind of mindset right now. I don't think he's as good as Zeke Elliott was. And I don't think he's as likely to. There's not a Dallas Cowboys opening this year. Like, that's not out there for a running back to land in. So I don't think you're going to quite hit the lottery with one of these running backs, though I do think they are very good. I think there are a handful of guys that I really like. I just don't think they are going to return a jackpot value quite as much.
I think he's a fine 3rd round pick. I really do. And again, in MFL10's a PPR league format, he's really, a thing that separates him from Fournette was, Fournette I thought was actually an okay receiver. He just was very, very rarely used there. Whereas with Dalvin Cook, you saw him running wide receiver routes even sometimes. And you said there's not going to be a Dallas landing spot. I think Oakland is something close to that. We've seen them use Latavius Murray as a workhorse running back 2 seasons ago. He's really not good, but that offensive line is fantastic, in my opinion. And I think if you do draft Dalvin Cook, you probably have to take him in the first 15, 20 picks or so. And if you're taking him there, you're probably using him as that workhorse running back. Nick, I did see, some issues with him running inside. That was kind of a concern for me. So many times, he tried to bounce outside, and he was fantastic there. But that was, one of the few knocks for him on my notes. Leonard Fournette, yeah.
I would be mind blown if the Raiders used a 1st-round pick on an offensive player. I just don't see that happening, man. I mean, I don't see that they need to improve on the offensive side of the ball. Their defense is kind of bad.
Yeah, their defense underperformed, but I kind of like a lot of their pieces still.
But their secondary is like abysmal.
Leonard Fournette. So he, his 2015 was a lot better than his 2016, and he was dealing with some injuries last year. Is that right, Nick?
Yeah, he had an ankle issue, and then he tried to come back and re-injured it. And they have a pretty good backup there in Darius Geis, so I think they were okay letting him rest up.
So a few of my notes on him. He's 6'1", 236 pounds. He is a little bit older, but and much heavier than Cook. He's fantastic short yardage with him. You're not going to take him off the field in goal line situations. Really, that's actually where he excels. He's big. He's super hard to tackle. He gets surprisingly small in between tackles, I think, or at least for what I expected. He's not really used a lot on passing downs. He's so hard to tackle. If you're only coming in at an okay angle or you're just getting an arm on him, that's not going to be enough. He just keeps getting and fighting for extra yards. If he averages like 6 yards per carry, this is what it's going to be. It's going to be 6 yards, 6 yards, 6 yards, 8 yards, 4 yards, 10 yards, 4 yards, 6 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, 5. He just keeps getting chunk yardage. He can change directions. He does have a really good offensive line. He did run into the back of his offensive lineman a bit too much for my liking. He might be a little bit more scheme dependent than Dalvin Cook. Can be a workhorse. Has home run ability, maybe not as much as Cook. Yeah. Anything? So what do you think, Nick?
Yeah, you have a lot of good notes there. Yeah, and I think one of the things with Fournette that I saw was he tried to do way too much this last year, and even did that last year against Alabama, where he's trying to make big plays, and that's really hurting himself instead of just sticking with where the play's designed and just cutting off of that. But you're correct. He's a little bit more scheme dependent because he doesn't have as much of the lateral ability and flexibility that maybe a Dalvin Cook has. But in the same realm, I don't think Dalvin Cook is scheme free. You know what I mean? I don't think that it doesn't matter no matter where he goes, he's going to be a superstar. I think that he needs to have a solid offensive line as well, just because of that interior running issue. And sometimes Dalvin has some balanced stuff. But anyway, back to Fournette. He's just so powerful. I mean, I don't think people realize. I mean, he is just beats people down, and he has more wiggle than people realize. I know it's a humongous knock, but he can juke guys. He makes guys miss on the second, third level. And for a guy that is, 6'1", 6'2", 230, 240 probably, his burst is unbelievable. I don't know that people know how much good an athlete and how much he's going to blow up the combine at 230 plus. I mean, he might be one of the best 230 plus combines that we've seen maybe ever. We'll see. He is phenomenal there. Yeah, you're right. It wasn't utilized a lot in the passing game, but definitely has a complete game to him. He's just not going to be, as you said, he can get small in those areas, but he can't do that, as much as a Cook can. So, and that's why Cook's going to get the nod. But I personally would rather have the bigger guy for an NFL team because it's going to be sustainable.
Yeah. There's nothing more exciting about highlights from this class than watching Fournette run motherfuckers over. It's so awesome.
I mean, stiff arms too. I mean, it's not just a shoulder. I mean, and I think my favorite one was against Auburn when he's going to the left sideline and making a few cuts and gets by two guys, and then there's a safety, and he just goes right into him and just knocks him over. It's just, you have your P. Ryans and your, Deontay Foreman's and these other big backs in this class, but they're not going to run a high 4.3, a low 4.4, and Fournette is easy. I think he might break 4 even to the 4.3s.
Wait, Leonard Fournette's going to run a 4.3 40 at 236 pounds?
He could.
That would, I think if he, I posted a tweet on this, because I heard another big name draft guy say that. I think if he runs better than a 4.45, he breaks the all-time record for speed score. So just 4.3 anything is just absolutely mind-blowing. But I have heard that. I didn't see that much speed, but I did see amazing, really tremendous burst. Do you have a comp for us on Fournette?
Wow. On the spot, man.
I want to say like 2007, 2008 Brandon Jacobs. But that's like a huge compliment because I love Brandon Jacobs, and he was awesome those 2 years.
Well, yeah, I don't think people don't recognize how good Brandon Jacobs was, or Auburn was when they had Ronnie Cadillac and Brandon Jacobs there. By the way, no, I don't really have a comp because he really reminds me a lot of AP, but he doesn't have that flexibility and a lot in terms of how Fournette has to go to the designed hole. But they're both big and super athletic, so maybe a less flexible, maybe faster AP.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, this is a guy who was being like before this year, he was being comped to AP. You know, that was like what everybody was comping him to. And like the one thing that he does similar to AP is just like his legs don't stop ever.
No, he's a playmaker, and I think he's not getting the respect because of a Cook and because people love speed. But I think Fournette's going to be pretty he's underrated right now, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, but from an MFL10 standpoint, you know, if he's not catching passes in a PPR league, that really hurts. When they were using him in the passing game, and I think they should have used him there more, to be honest. He just got, you know, first downs, and he did well. Why do you think he was not being used there? And do you think he could, you know, see work as a receiver his freshman year?
Well, I think he wasn't utilized there because LSU doesn't utilize those players well at all. AKA when you watch Odell Beckham or you watch even the wide receivers, Dupree and whoever else, they're that staff, and it's been in turmoil there with Orgeron there now. But anyway, I think he could be a guy that gets, you know, between 25 and 35 receptions a year. It's just not going to be a high end volume, in my opinion. But I think he could be effective. So again, as you said, that is valuable in terms of fantasy football for MFL 10s, and that's why I think some people are going to be real excited about the third guy in my class with Joe Mixon.
Oh, all right. Let's hear your take on Joe Mixon.
Well, Joe Mixon scares me because one, he's very young. I mean, he's a year and a half younger than Fournette and a full year younger than Dalvin Cook. People don't realize that. And his off the field stuff. And the other thing he scares me is I don't know how truly athletic Joe Mixon is in terms of a straight speed and burst kind of guy. But from everything else, he's good. I mean, he has the size. I mean, he's probably going to come in at 215, maybe even 220. We'll see in terms of a weight. Very creative flexibility, hands, tracks the ball well. He does a lot of those things that you love in fantasy football perspective. Inside running is the only area probably a question in terms of his skill set. We'll see, because I know Oklahoma runs that super spread scheme, and you know they even run a little zone read option sometimes with Baker Mayfield. So, you know, inside running, I think he could do it, but I need to see it a little bit more. But in terms of the catching ability and being a mismatch and even down the field, I mean, he's just phenomenal. That's what people are going to love him. They're probably going to think maybe a David Johnson, but I don't think that Mixon is the level of athlete of David Johnson in a straight line.
So we have our residential attorney on staff here at the Power Hour podcast. So John Proctor Esquire, why don't you give us your legal take on Joe Mixon really just, you know, cold cocking a girl and breaking her jaw, which is really, really brutal video to watch.
Yeah. The fact that there's a tape is what makes it really, really, really bad. And my concern with Mixon is that he could go undrafted, like depending how the conversation goes at the time of the draft.
But then he gets to pick his team.
Right, but we always talk about that. Oh, it's awesome. This undrafted guy gets to pick who he wants to play for. And yeah, like it makes the contract better in the sense that he can get a bigger contract sooner and this and that. But in the end, like being undrafted hurts you as a player getting on the field and you know, early on in the season. So that's my concern. But also at the same time is that everyone in like the fantasy world hates this guy. So you're going to get that he punched a girl discount in draft. It's just, I mean, we talked about this last year. Like, you know, people want to bring their morals into the fantasy football world, but you can't do that.
Listen, this guy is a scumbag. we say he punched a girl. This wasn't a domestic violence thing. He was at like the school cafeteria or something, and a girl like got in his face, and without even like blinking, he just like arm went out, knocked her the fuck out. She was on the floor, broken jaw, and he just immediately was like, "Well, gotta run," and just took off. This guy's a scumbag, douchebag. I don't want success for him. But I mean, the NFL is filled with bad people. Ray Lewis probably killed a man. And to me, as a fantasy player, they're just, bags of meat. They're not real people to me. They're just, making me money. And I'm okay with that. And so, I'm just gonna take that out of the equation. And Nick, you want to say something?
Well, I think when we look at past guys that have had domestic abuse concerns at the running back position, you look at Jeremy Hill punched a guy on video, and he's still a second-round pick. You look at Carlos Hyde, he maybe slapped a woman at a bar at Ohio State, got suspended. He's still a second-round pick. And then you have a guy like Isaiah Crowell, who is not even close to the level of talent of those guys, in my opinion, goes undrafted. So to me, I think he still goes day two. I think, as you said, you have to put your kind of your moral compass aside. That's tough for me because I want to believe in people. My day job, I'm a counselor, so I'd like to really believe that people can kind of overcome things. But that doesn't matter. In the end, do they score me fantasy points, and can they help me win money and championships? That's it. And Joe Mixon can do that.
Yeah, and another player for your list is Tyreek Hill, who punched his pregnant girlfriend in the stomach.
And everyone loved the dude this year. Like, what?
Exactly.
Like, anyway,
the masses, just make no sense. They just want to get angry when they want to get angry, and there's no consistency to it. And but as a player, I think Mixon's lights out. From a fantasy perspective, I might even have him above Fournette just because, he's really strong as a receiver. They had him running wheel routes and things like that. In my notes, I have a few hesitations that I want you to touch upon. But yeah, I loved how explosive he was, his balance, how he fought for extra yardage, and how strong he was as a receiver. But here are my concerns. One, Samaje Perine got more carries in 2016. And now right under that, my notes are Mixon was the thunder and lightning of this committee. Perine was the drizzle. And I wonder if he benefited from worn down defenses, because this team just ran the ball nonstop. I think there was one game I watched where he ran the ball 20 times in a row, literally, and then the 21st was like a toss to Mixon that barely crossed the line of scrimmage. Yeah. So what do you have to say about that?
I think I like Perine probably more than you do, but no, it's certainly valid because, like I said, that scheme is also spread scheme. It's not like it's Fournette where it's very congested as well. So there's not going to be a lot of penetration, and one missed block is going to blow up the whole play like it would with Fournette. Yeah, he ran wheel routes, and I think he's strong. After the catch in balance, as you had said. What was your other negative? I forgot offhand.
Just worn down defenses, and he didn't get. Perine got more carries than him.
Yeah, I think Perine's good. That's the thing. I really like Perine. The problem is Perine, I think, was banged up a little bit this last year and wasn't as explosive as past years. I'm not as excited about Perine when he ran all over Kansas for a record, because if you watch number 5 from Kansas as safety, it was the worst safety play I've ever seen in my life. He was running basically in the opposite direction, and then Perine goes for 60 yards. But I still think he's a really good player. So it's kind of a, hey, let's keep both guys fresh, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. All right. And yeah, he's 20 years old, and so is the next running back on our list, Christian McCaffrey, who I am just Darius Sanders. I'm just in love with this guy. He's an amazing receiver. I think he could be a wide receiver if he wanted to. Just his 2015 tape, it was one of the best games I've ever seen from any running back in recent memory. I think he really deserved the Heisman when you add in all of his work as a receiver and in special teams. The knocks on him, of course, are going to be size, and does he have that next level speed? I mean, if you look at all the plays where he's just housing the ball 90 yards for a touchdown, I think clearly he does. And a lot of the comps I've seen on him are super, super interesting. Like, a slightly lesser LaDainian Tomlinson or Tiki Barber or Brian Westbrook. And I kind of agree with all of those. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think one of the things I like the most about McCaffrey, and you had touched on, like, what is his athleticism, but there are players that get the most out of their athleticism, and it happens on the field, and then there are guys that test well at the combine. You don't see all of that on the field, or you see 80% on the field. He gets 100% on there because he works hard. The other thing is his attitude. He fits it up inside and is not afraid to lower his shoulder or run between the tackles. In fact, I think he runs between the tackles too often, and he should bounce more runs to the outside, which is not what you would think from a guy who I currently have as sub 200. I don't know where he'll actually be, but I like him a lot, as you said. And there are games he just completely took over in 2015. And then you look at 2016. I mean, there's this guy that went to the first round to the 49ers, the guard. I cannot remember his name right now. First round pick.
Sorry.
Embarrassing. I apologize. I remembered it in Filmetrics. I don't remember here, but they have a first round guard that left Stanford, and now McCaffrey got 0.3 more yards per carry in 2016 after a phenomenal 2015. I don't think that anyone could improve on, and he's certainly the marked guy. He got better. So in that realm, that's something to think about. But yes, good speed. He makes the first guy miss almost every time. He is not going to have phenomenal power, but he tries hard and has good effort there. When you said those comps, that's exactly where he's going to be. I mean, he's going to be a good player. And if you don't like him because of his race, shame on you, because you're going to lose fantasy football games.
They used him in short yardage, which I thought was super surprising, and he was effective there. He really was. He's super shifty, great vision, very patient. He sheds tacklers really well for the size complaints. He can dance on the sideline beautifully. He's so many balls. Like, he just took 60, 40, 50, 80 yards to the house. He's insanely hard to tackle. Here it is. One play was a botched snap fumble by the quarterback, and he runs 60 yards to make the tackle on the 1 yard line. Just amazingly, you were talking about him trying hard. Yes, he fits all the white football player stereotypes: gritty, high motor. He gets a hole and he's gone. Great, amazing short area vision. I think he crushes the 3-cone. Johnny, what do you have to say?
I spent the most of my time watching him as a receiver was what I was more interested in. It's a new NFL, and we talked about PPR leagues and whatnot, and not to say that he could go out and be a wide receiver, but he's running good routes, and that's not something you see a whole lot out of running backs coming out of college. At least running backs who are running back first. So I think he could, if he lands in the right spot, he could have, some Theo Riddick-ish type usage, and that would be awesome.
Well, and there's people that go crazy about, like, Deion Lewis, or some of those guys. McCaffrey is such a better football player than they are. So I'm with you there, John. I mean, his route running, I mean, they lined him up wide. I mean, not just like in a slot, even up wide, and he's beating people and stemming them. And you guys had said he could be a good player just as a wide receiver. So, I mean, I think he's a better receiver than Mixon is, and that's saying something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think he comes into the NFL next year and he's immediately a top 3 receiver as a running back, and I think he really could transition to play wide receiver in the NFL and be great at it. Really love this guy. He's going to be huge in the MFL10s just based on how strong he is as a receiver. But again, we need that team to, use him appropriately. Off the top of your head, Nick, I know I keep doing this to you and it's not really fair, but what would be a good fit? I think honestly he could excel on any team, but really you want one that uses him as what he should be getting, 200 carries and like 60 targets, ideally. Nick, what do you think?
Well, I think there's two of them, and I don't know if it's fair to use them, but one would be New England, right? They utilize a back just like that all the time, and he's much better than any of them they've ever had. Maybe like a Woodhead in his prime, but I think he's way better than Woodhead in his prime. But if you think of those numbers he got, and the other one would be Green Bay. If you think Ty Montgomery's good, imagine Christian McCaffrey there and the dump offs that Rodgers loves to do there.
Jesus, yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and I've seen him mocked to Green Bay in a few, so that'd be exciting.
So next guy on my list is Alvin Kamara, and from my notes, I watched 2016 versus Kentucky, and I wrote fell asleep, need to rewatch, and I rewatched it, and I immediately understood why I fell asleep. I'm hearing him going in the first round. I don't think he's anywhere near the talent as the other four guys we just touched upon. Nick, you agree?
I think the talk of Alvin Kamara in the first round is the biggest joke that I've heard of this year. He is, for a guy that doesn't have that much statistical backing in his 2 years at Tennessee, on top of the hype. If you watch, 80% of his runs go outside of the tackles or swing passes. Of course, you're going to gain yards and you're going to look efficient. But for a guy that's supposed to win in space, I don't see a phenomenal athlete. I don't see a guy that makes the first guy miss every time. I see him go down easier than he should. That doesn't mean that he can't break tackles or that he's not a bad player. But for a first-round pick, oh my gosh, that would be a huge mistake.
Yeah, I think it's I think Daniel Jeremiah is the one who I've seen really pushing Kamara as a first rounder.
Is he his agent or?
Huh?
Is he his agent?
No, he's the, NFL Network ex-college quarterback guy. I don't know why he's in on him, but I've seen him put Kamara in like the top 20 pick in a couple of his mock drafts. I don't know.
I'm gonna have to start unfollowing him on Twitter, but I mean, I think he's an okay guy, but I don't even know that he's the fifth back in this class, and I think it's not even really close. He's not even close in the same tier as the top four, as you said, Scott. I mean, there's a group of probably five guys after that, and maybe he's in there, but he's never going to be a great interior runner. He doesn't have great power, and like I said, there's other issues of him being that level of athlete, and I don't know that he breaks a 4.5. He's probably a 4.5. 3, 4, 5, 4 type of guy.
All right. Next up on my list is a guy I'm super, super excited about. I just love his talent, and that's Kareem Hunt from Toledo. He's just so much fun to watch. He's 21 years old, about 200 pounds, 5'11", though throughout his career his weight did fluctuate a lot. We've seen him play big, and we've seen him play a little skinnier. He had a really, really bad offensive line, and that just made it so much more fun to watch. Him dragging tacklers, so many forced missed tackles, so many tough yards after contact, constantly hit before the line of scrimmage and turning it into an 8-12-yard gain. I think in his first bowl game as a rookie, as a freshman, he had like 32 carries for 275 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's strong as a receiver. Amazing balance. He probably lacks, top speed. He's probably not going to do great at the 40, but he somehow manages to maintain speed despite making these like crazy jukes and turns. Great stiff arm. I really like this guy. Nick, are you with me?
I'm coming with you. You're Jerry Maguire. I'll be the goldfish, man. You got it. So yeah, I liked him. I thought he was going to declare and come out last year, but he had some injuries and didn't really happen for him. And then he lost some weight and was even more, quicker. I think he could be okay in the 40. I mean, I think he's going to be a sub 4.55 type of guy. At least there's an outside chance he could make it in the 4.4s. You're looking at a guy that, was kind of a marked guy, but man, he just did everything. And I think he's one of those players that's above average to good in every category, at least. So he's a guy that could be a very safe option. And when you want to talk about like a lotto ticket, late in some MFL10 type of draft or a rookie draft for Dynasty, Kareem Hunt's going to be on the rise for sure and a guy to think on.
So in 2016, among 139 qualifying draft-eligible running backs with at least 150 carries, Hunt ranked 12th in yards after contact per attempt, 3rd in yards per route run, and 1st in missed tackles forced per touch. So really that just highlights, all these stats are kind of like offensive line independent. He's getting tough yardage after contact. He's forcing missed tackles, and he's strong as a receiver when used there as well. Another interesting point is, so over the past 3 seasons, Kareem Hunt has 661 rushing attempts. Hunt didn't fumble on a single one of those. And if that's another thing we want to talk about. So yeah, he had the best fumble percentage by far. No one came close to him. Christian McCaffrey was top 5. He had only 3 fumbles on 630 carries over the past 3 seasons. Dalvin Cook actually had a lot of fumbles. He had 11 fumbles on pretty much the same amount of rushing attempts as Kareem Hunt. Fournette was up there too with 7. Yeah, Hunt's a guy I really like a lot. Wasn't being talked about a lot before the Senior Bowl, and then had a big, nice breakout game. Sorry, Nick, were you saying something?
How many fumbles did Kamara have?
I don't have that on me right now.
I know he put it on the ground quite a bit too, but yeah, no, I like Hunt as well.
All right, so next guy on my list, I didn't get to really dig too deep into his tape, but my dude Alex Dunlap at Roster Watch is in love with him and kind of has some inside information with his running back coach. But I know a lot of guys are he's like one of the more divisive running backs in this class. Nick, where do you stand on D'Onta Foreman?
Oh, D'Onta Foreman? I think if you're looking for a more athletic D'Onta Foreman, I like Samaje Perine. So that's kind of where I'm at. But I think they're very similar guys in that they have great balance because they are low center of gravity type of players, about the same shape. They pack a lot of power. Foreman made a lot of big plays, but I think when you take the big plays out, I don't know how phenomenal he is. But I've kind of put both of them in that same category because they're not going to get the pass catching ability as you had said for MFL10s. So I don't know how great I'm going to concentrate on them in dynasty leagues, which is what I play in primarily, unless I'm going to get a good value. But I'm not as crazy about Foreman as probably some other people are. But I love his power. I love his effort during runs, balance, as I said. He's just not going to be a creative guy. You know what I mean? That lateral agility just isn't there.
I don't have too many more names on my list. Didn't get to watch too much of anyone else. Mike Renner at PFF, who is a really great tape guy. Last year, he was pounding the table for Jordan Howard. He said, whoever takes Jordan Howard is it was something like, Zeke Elliott's amazing, but Jordan Howard's an equivalent runner. You can get 4 rounds later. He said to watch out for Elijah Hood. He really liked his, 2015 tape. And you disagree, Nick?
I'm not an Elijah Hood fan. He's big. He has some power. I think that his high school testing numbers weren't there. I don't think he's that good of an athlete, and I don't see wiggle. And for a guy to win in a certain area, kind of like Kamara, if you're going to win with being a guy in space, you need to make the first guy miss all the time and be super quick and be really, elusive. And he's not. It's the same thing with Hood. I mean, if you're going to be successful there or you want to watch a highlight tape, sure, Hood's going to look okay in a few runs, kind of like Paul Perkins was last year. Remember, he had that one run, he made 5 guys miss, and that's all you saw on Twitter all the time. Yeah. How about all the rest of his runs where he looked very average, and now you saw what he was with the Giants? That's kind of what Hood is to me. I think he's just a guy. There's quite a few other guys that I like, and I'll hit on them quickly. My next guy in that same category, kind of that I have as my 5th, would be, Perine, Wayne Gallman, and Jamal Williams. Wayne Gallman at Clemson, he's not going to be super explosive, but man, you want to talk about a guy that is laterally really good, shows he is tough as nails, and he is going to run through people and put in tons of effort, catches the ball well, made many splash plays against Alabama 2 years ago. I think he had 2 or 3 of them, and he was about the only guy to show up in that game besides Watson. Jamal Williams, to kind of comp him here, Jamal Williams is kind of maybe a better version of what we thought Marcus Lattimore was going to be, at least where I had him. I was not phenomenal about Marcus Lattimore, but he's a big guy that moves super well and makes guys miss, being 220 plus, and that's a special category. Because I think if you're going to be really successful in the NFL, you have to make guys miss no matter your size. That's why I'm a little bit more down on the Foreman. Marlon Mack, super explosive guy that I like out of South Florida. I know some people are higher on Jeremy McNichols than me. I'm not there. Corey Clement, I like. James Conner, what a phenomenal story. I'm going to cheer for that guy till the end. And if you don't know that story, I'd encourage you to Google James Conner, running back Pittsburgh. Just phenomenal there. And then a couple just late flyers. Justin Davis isn't that bad out of USC. Pretty good in every area. And Joe Williams, explosive. Laterally, not sure that it's there, but he's out of Utah.
All right. So round 17, 18, 19, 20, lottery ticket, rookies. I guess the guys that pop out then outside of the names that everyone knows is going to be Katie Cannon, Wayne Gallman, Jamal Williams, Samaje Perine. Right?
I'm with you there. Yep.
And then Evan Ingram too, if he's going late. Giants, I'm a Giants homer. Keep getting mocked. OJ Howard in the first round or Njoku. I agree with you. I'd much rather have Evan Ingram in the second. So any final thoughts, Nick?
No, I think overall in this class, when you look at it, there's the top four, and then when you want to look at about number 5 through about number 25, they're all about equal. And so if you can get, and again, in dynasty leagues, if you can get the more picks in that area, it's going to be better for you than trying to get with just one of those guys, because I think a lot of them are pretty good talents, and it's going to be situation based and how much they develop their game and their effort. But there's really, I know people talked about the 2017 classes being this something, and then Chubb didn't have the year, and Cortland Sutton went back to school. Shout out to Cortland Sutton. I have to do that in every podcast. But, it's a very deep class, and I think that's something to recognize. So when you're watching the NFL draft, you're watching the combine, pay attention, because round 5, there's still going to be guys out there that are worth it.
Right. So if you're doing a redraft league and where is the first round that you're biting on one of these rookie running backs, a Cook or a Fournette?
Probably round 3. Probably. I'm just not great. I don't love investing in rookies in redraft. I'm just not one of those guys, just because they have to learn so much. It all has to come together, and it just traditionally doesn't happen. I mean, what Zeke Elliott did is not the norm. I mean, it's an outlier. What Doug Martin did was the outlier, and kind of counting on that in round 2, as you had said, John, is just a mistake.
Yep, I'm with you.
All right, Nick, thank you so much for coming on. This was really an awesome, super fun podcast, and hopefully we'll be able to do it again after the actual NFL draft. Nick, have you ever done an MFL10?
I think I've done one, and I was really bad. I didn't. It's just not my thing.
So I've done like 300 of them over the past 2 years. They're amazing, a ton of fun, super addicting, super profitable if you're good and listen to our advice. Today's sponsor is myfantasyleague.com and MFL10s, which come out on Monday. Going to be super exciting. Nick, I'm making you do an MFL10 with us. We're doing a big MFL10 series where we have one of our guests or all of our guests in the league, and then our listeners can join as well, and it's all for free. You don't have to put in any money. Our listeners don't have to put in any money, and if you win, you get $100. The way, if you're listening at home, the way to get into this is leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, and then either screenshot it and send it to me, or just leave your Twitter handle in there, and then we'll draw names from a hat. Yes, we're cheating the system, but our podcast is good and also deserves 5-star reviews. So go ahead and do that. You can check out Nick's work at DLF.com. Is that right?
Yeah, dynastyleaguefootball.com.
Okay. And the Devy Report. You want to plug that?
Yeah, that's kind of owning my life right now. It's I'm behind, and I apologize. Life's kind of getting in the way, but it's the DevyReport.com. Last year was 144 pages for $5. This year I doubled the price. I'm gonna have some video stuff. It's gonna be
still a huge bargain.
Yeah, it's gonna be north of 150, but
Oof.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. You know, it's a love-hate relationship right now.
Yeah, I had the Devy Report last year. Definitely well worth $10 by far. Great content, and as you know from listening to this podcast, Nick brings the goods. I'm Scott Barrett. I'm late. I'm about 10 minutes late for a RotoViz podcast. Johnny, anything to add?
No, man. Fine. You can find Nick on Twitter at _Nick Whalen. Find Scott at Scott Barrett DFB. Find me at John Proctor DFS. Make sure you check out the Devy Report. Make sure you are ready to sign up for MFL10s on Monday. And that's it. Peace.